Welcome to the Waiver Wire Show. Brian McFadden here, co-founder of Legit Football. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Kevin Phillip Fox, content creator extraordinaire. Kevin, week 5 in the books, week 6 right around the corner. We've got some waiver wire suggestions. Are you ready to do this?
Dude, I was born ready, man. I'm so excited. This season, we were just saying in the pre-chat, it's just been an absolute bloodbath for injuries, but where there is pain, there is also opportunity, and we have to be the ones who are on top of it, Brian, and that's what we're doing here by being on this show. So let's get
Does
it.
it feel like there's more injuries than normal? I don't know if we say that every single season, but it feels like there's more major injuries than normal. What do you think?
I actually think that I agree, especially for fantasy football. I'm the drumbeat for fixing the turf is something that I'm really in favor of because player safety should be the most important thing, and I feel like the NFL says that, but they don't really mean it. Let's see them put their money where their mouth is, Brian. I'm sick of losing guys for the season that I drafted in the first round. I can't have it.
Saw some notable slips. Travis Kelce, Justin Jefferson just tweaked his hamstring out of nowhere. Whether that's grass, turf, we're not going to get into that. What we are going to do is we're going to tell the people who they should pick up to replace those injured players. So our show is extremely valuable for tonight to refresh. We are going to make this short and sweet. We're going to run through our top 10 lists. Kevin and I's differ slightly, but we'll give our context on why we have different players ranked in different spots. We will have a spot at the end where if you have specific waiver wire questions, we'll try to address them. But otherwise, we will make this short, sweet, and to the point. Kevin, are you ready to get to waiver wire for week 6?
So ready, man. So excited. Let's get to it.
All right, so we're going to change things up. If you've been watching the last few weeks, we've gone position by position, but we're just going to give you a top 10 list going forward. We think that's the most valuable because we're not going to try to squeeze in a quarterback when most of you guys in redrafts are going to have your quarterbacks. We're just going to get right to here's the top 10 guys that we think you should put waiver wire claims in. We will make some small fob suggestions, but if you have specific questions around how much you want to bid on a guy, just put it in the chat and we'll try to address it at the end. So Kevin, this is my list. My top 10 list that you guys see on the screen. Once again, we're live on YouTube. If you're listening to this in a podcast form, you probably want to come to the YouTube show. You may not listen in time to make your waiver wire claims today. But going forward, next week, we're going to make this a consensus, Kev. But somebody didn't get his rankings in time.
I forgot to hit 10.
We're just looking at my 10.
We've all been there.
So the list you guys see up there, this is my personal top 10. But Kev, this is going to differ. Kev, we're just going to start at number 1 and go all the way down. How does that sound?
Love it. Sounds all right. Sounds beautiful.
So since all the people can see my list, we're going to start at number 1. I've got my number 1 waiver wire claim as Chicago Bears rookie running back Roschon Johnson. He's Khalil Herbert on IR, missing at least 4 games. Roschon Johnson did leave the game with a concussion, but I think he's going to be cleared in time. Even if he's not, even if he misses 1 game with a concussion, you're going to get at least 3 games of a running back who's averaging 4.9 yards per carry, 11 receptions on 12 targets as a backup in only 4 games because he could win out early in that Washington game. So to me, when you can get a starting running back who already has standalone value at this point in the season, that's why I put him at number 1.
No, and I think it's a phenomenal pickup. We've been in on the talent of Roschon Johnson all year. He's a mainstay on this show because the Bears haven't really committed yet. So the fantasy roster percentage hasn't really adjusted quite yet, like what we're projecting to potentially be a lead back down the stretch. So definitely not a bad call. He's my number 2, and I'm really glad that you made him your number 1. So I'll just say my 2 cents on it. I mean, look, we're definitely without Herbert for a while. I think there should be a little bit of hedging and a little bit of consideration for D'Onta Foreman, just because, he was a stud last year.
Correct, but this is a guy that has been a healthy scratch in every game this season. This is a guy that they believed in so much that they just didn't even suit him up over a rookie that they were giving passing work to in week 1. So that's why I get that D'Onta Foreman is on a lot of lists. That's why he's not on my list personally.
Yeah, he's going to be lower on mine, super low actually. But you said he was a healthy scratch, and the key word there is healthy. And Roschon right now is fighting this concussion. So I don't think it's a huge deal.
1 week flyer. You want to throw D'Onta Foreman out there. Yeah, there's worse.
Definitely. I don't think it's a huge deal, but I just flipped your 1 and 2. So I'll just, spoiler alert for my list, but go ahead and
spoiler alert. We're going 1-1, 2-2. So give me your first pick.
Well, yeah, I got Tyjae Spears. And I put him as my 1 because I think he might have standalone value rest of season, independent of anybody else's health, right? Like Khalil Herbert is probably the lead guy, if healthy, or at least getting a big chunk of the valuable work. But Tyjae Spears, his usage has been great. His snap percentage was steadily going up. There was kind of a weird outlier week last week where Derrick Henry kind of just set the world on fire. I mean, he tends to do that time and time again.
That was week 4, not this most recent week. This
Right,
most
yeah.
recent week, he went back to being slow plodding
Yeah,
Derrick Henry again.
exactly, which is something we hate to see, something we hope isn't the new Derrick Henry. It's possible the cliff may have hit, and if it has, then Tyjae Spears is such a smash play. He's such a smash pickup. He's so talented. He's been making the most of his touches. He's very explosive. He scored on a trick play this week, right? It was like a reverse.
It was an end around. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something that I love to see. That means the coaches want to draw up looks for him. He's my 2, but 1 and 2, they're really quite interchangeable for me this week.
So the reason I put Spears at 2, and I totally get the argument for putting him at 1. I wouldn't hate you. I've been on Spears since the offseason. I was devastated by the no ACL news because it hurt him in Dynasty. But for redraft, doesn't hurt him at all. So here's a guy, 5.8 yards per carry. He was running back 11 this past week in week 5, 14 receptions on 19 targets already in a backup role. The only reason I have him at number 2 is Derrick Henry is still the lead dog, even if he's not as efficient, whereas Roschon Johnson is RB1. Even if he misses a week, you can guarantee that he's going to be an RB1. He's going to get more opportunities than Spears. So I really like the talent of Spears. If Derrick Henry was injured, it would be a no-brainer. Spears would be at number 1. Did you have Roschon at number 2?
Yeah, it's just flipped. Yep. I let 1 and 2.
Let's keep it going. We got a number of running backs at the top of at least my list. Number 3, let's go ahead with undrafted rookie Amari DeMercado, who got his time to shine when James Conner went out. Keontae Ingram was also injured. So here comes this undrafted rookie from TCU, and he scored a touchdown. So to me, you're going to have opportunity. He was RB15, and the fact that Conner's an IR, just like the Roschon argument, he doesn't have the talent of Roschon, but the fact that he is going to be RB1 for at least the next few weeks, that's an automatic pickup for me.
Yeah, and I got him on my list. He's at number 5 for me, just a little lower based on upside, but I still really love the opportunity to buy here, especially if you need a spot start. They're playing the Rams, so it's not exactly a bad matchup. It's not a great matchup, but I definitely don't hate. There are worse dart throws that you can have.
The Cardinals want to run the ball. We've seen that.
Yeah.
With Jonathan Gannon's offense, they want to play ball control. It's worked great. James Conner is off to a hot start. DeMercado got in the touchdown. Got in the end zone last week. So he's going to get touches, and a lot, there's 2 things. There's talent and there's volume, and he's going to get volume in Arizona.
Absolutely. I love the pick. Number 3, I just went with your first tight end, I believe, Logan Thomas. I just moved him up. He's a stud, man. And he's had the talent his whole career. Concussions have been a problem. Health has been a problem. But there is clear major chemistry between him and Sam Howell. He has his quarterback's trust, and that is worth its weight in gold, especially when it's kind of a more volume passing attack, I would say. We saw a crazy eruption on Thursday Night Football. So I think Logan Thomas, in a disgusting, brutal tight end landscape, Logan Thomas is a screaming buy for me. I'm talking, I might go, I would get out of the minimum fab range. I would maybe get in the $5 to $10 fab range, 5 to 10%, I should say, because I really think that he could be a tight end 1 in such a disgusting tight end landscape.
I think the reason I have Thomas at 6 has nothing to do with his talent. Is more just positional value. Like you've got some RB1s on this list by default because of injury. Mm-hmm. You've got some wide receiver ones seemingly, or Downs, is more of a 2, but we'll get to him in a second. Let's get to number 4. Speaking of wide receiver ones, questionably, and that's KJ Osborne, another guy who's replacing a guy who just went on injured reserve. And there's talk that Jefferson could be longer than 4 weeks. Is it a contract thing? I don't know. We're not going to get into that on the waiver wire show. But here, KJ Osborne, last season, we need to remember this. Slow start this, sure, but 60 receptions on 90 targets in 2022. 3 top 13 finishes towards the end of last season. And when Jefferson went out, Kevin, he had 9 targets against the Chiefs. I know we all love Jordan Addison. By the way, the reason Addison's not on this list is he did not qualify. He's rostered in more than 50% of rosters. That was the standard we used. KJ Osborne is not. So you're getting a guy who, because he's a veteran presence, probably becomes the de facto number 1 and Addison in number 2, or at least they're 1A and 1B. In an offense that likes to pass the ball under Kirk Cousins and Kevin O'Connell, I like Osborne as my top wide receiver pickup. Yeah,
he's a screaming buy. He's lower on the list for me just because we have seen him. But you're kind of swaying me a little bit, Brian. Like, sometimes I forget. I have just the Jefferson and Thielen blinders for the Vikings receiving core last couple of years.
And Addison, Osborne, everybody, he's the new shiny toy, but Osborne was a sleeper.
He's contributed. He
Yeah.
really has, and he's got talent. Like that can't really be debated. He passes the eye test when you watch him play. So I love the pick. It's pretty high. It's pretty rich. What percentage of your fab are you dropping on KJ Osborne?
Wait, I think from a talent perspective, Addison's more talented, so I'm not going to throw a lot. But you are going to get a possible wide receiver one in a high volume offense. That is worth a lot on its own. So even if Osborne is not a stud necessarily, 9 targets against the Chief. I think the
Yeah,
Vikings are going to be playing from behind a lot. It's a team that wants to pass the ball a lot. So that alone, if I can get a guy like Osborne to get 7 to 9 targets a game, then I'm probably going to put at least 10% fob
I was
down.
thinking 10 minimum, but I was thinking, would you go up to say, like, let's say you're desperate. Let's say you're the Jefferson owner. Would you get
Team
up to
needs, yes.
20%?
Okay. If you're a Justin Jefferson owner, yeah, 20%, maybe more. If you
Yeah,
don't have a
same.
deep bench,
I
he is
agree.
you need a 1-for-1 replacement. Osborne is as good as it's going to get for what's available on the waiver wire right now.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And again, you talked about positional value. I kind of threw that out the window a bit when I made this list. I have Gardner Minshew at 4, and he's not even on your list.
Ooh.
I have him very high, Brian.
Yeah, fair,
But
fair.
there's rumors that Anthony Richardson could go on IR. Like he's gonna miss several weeks.
Yeah.
The AC joint in the throwing shoulder, not good, right? So I threw Gardner Minshew on my list because when he plays, he's a great fantasy option pretty consistently. They're getting Jonathan Taylor back. They have the second coming of Barry Sanders and Zach Moss already in the lineup. So, I absolutely love what we're looking at with Gardner Minshew and his opportunity to succeed for fantasy football. If you're a team, I hate streaming quarterbacks, but I've been kind of forced into that decision in a couple leagues. Like, I drafted Geno. I'm sure the people who drafted Danny Dimes thinking that he was going to be their guy, like they're probably in the
Danny
streaming world right
Duds.
now. Danny Duds. It's official.
Yeah.
The ship has sailed. I'm ready to admit it. But I think Gardner is such a solid streamer, and he's somebody who you could plug
Good
into your
floor.
lineup for
I'll say that.
multiple
The
weeks.
the reason
Yeah,
I have Howell as my quarterback, and we get to him at number 8,
yeah.
is just the ceiling.
I
And and
totally I
and
agree.
I don't see, so Minshew's not ever going to produce, or rarely going to produce a 4 touchdown game, but
Yeah,
he'll get you a score or two and 200 something yards. So if you need a streamer where you need to count on a certain amount of QB points,
yeah,
I like the Minshew play.
definitely. So
So
you're
let's stay on the same team and go to
yep,
my number 5, Josh Downs. And here's regarding Minshew, one of the reasons I'm so high on Downs. By the way, I've been high on Downs since the
the
offseason.
draft.
He
The
was one of
draft.
my favorite wide receivers. I would have put him probably at number 4 and number 5 in my wide receiver rankings. That's how high I was on him. I think our mock draft, I put him in the first round, if you remember
I
that,
think
towards
so
the tail
too.
end. That's how
Yeah.
high I was on Downs. But wide receiver 18 last week. But here's the thing: 14 receptions on 18 targets for 154 yards in the 2 games Minshew has played prominently. Minshew likes to target Josh Downs.
Chemistry.
Downs was getting targets from Anthony Richardson, but Minshew is peppering Downs with targets. He finished with 97 yards last week, just shy of 100. I think he is going to be the guy that he's clearly comfortable with. So that's another guy that talent meets volume and opportunity with Minshew at quarterback for Indianapolis.
Yeah, and so as to not beat a dead horse, I have Downs as my number 6 pickup. Demercado is my number 5 pickup. So we're kind of in lockstep so far. But on the Downs thing, I mean, you're right. You got to love Anthony Richardson in general and just the way that he's come out and performed. But Minshew is that guy. Like when it comes to funneling and peppering a slot option, or a player like Josh Downs, who, like you've kind of touted all along, his contested catch percentage is shockingly great for a small player. Minshew's that kind of quarterback.
Yeah,
He's
Minshew is not going to help an Alec Pierce type, right?
right,
Minshew is not going to stretch the field like an Anthony
right,
Richardson, but he's going to pepper your Michael Pittmans and your Josh Downs, the guys who
definitely.
work over the middle of the field.
So I think Josh Downs. I think personally for me at this stage, I'm thinking about getting into the. He's not a must start, but he's a weekly. Like you could flex him almost any
Sure.
given game.
Yeah,
So
especially
I
with bye weeks now.
think if he's still on your waiver wires, I would say maybe again 10 to 15%. We're kind of comfortably in that range so far. Other than the top 2, I might go maybe 25-30% for those guys.
Yeah.
But for everybody else, especially in deeper leagues, double flex leagues, I'm looking at these guys a little bit closer. And then as far as Demercado goes, just he's got juice. He scored. Connor's out. They got a good matchup against the Rams. He's probably going to get a lot of volume.
For multiple
Hopefully,
too, it's not even just this week. The
right.
fact that Connor is now on IR, it went from, oh,
Could
he's got
be.
a knee injury, to, oh, he'll be out several weeks, to, oh, he's going to be on injured reserve.
Yeah.
Demercado's value just keep bumping up.
So I couldn't agree more. And then, so that's my 5 and 6. So if you want to give us your 6 now, which I talked about, but please feel free to
Yeah, I'll
jump
throw
in.
some stats in. The reason why I really like Logan Thomas as my top tight end this week. Tight end nine overall on the season, not just last week. And he's averaging over 6 targets a game. Volume is king for all positions, but tight end in particular, because a lot of the tight end position are very touchdown dependent. Thomas is not that. He did score this past week, but he is getting peppered by targets, especially when they're behind from Sam Howell. Howell's comfortable. He's one of his security blankets. And a barren tight end landscape, a guy who's going to get 6 or more targets a game, sign me up all day.
Hell yeah. No, I love the Logan Thomas pickup. I mean, look, tight end streaming is almost as gross as quarterback streaming. I had Hunter Henry and I thought, I found my tight end. I'm so ready. He goosed me. It's just what happens, Brian. It's tight end, quarterback, and defense is always going to be revolving doors, and you have to stay water. You have to be ready to pivot when they show you who they are. When they show you who they are, Brian, believe them.
100%. All right. So did you already say your 6?
Yeah, Downs. I had Demercado and Downs. So
let's go on to number 7. Yeah. Tyler Conklin. We're staying in the tight end range. This is another guy who's a volume play, averaging 5.5 targets per game the last 4 weeks. Talked about a security blanket for Sam Howell with Logan Thomas. The same thing applies here. Zach Wilson, for all his faults, likes to give Conklin some short end targets. They may not be explosive, but especially in PPR leagues, if you can get a tight end that's getting over 5 targets a game, that's the least you can be happy with. And if you don't have a Kelsey or a Hawkinson or a Goddard type.
Yeah, and I definitely don't hate it. Like I said, the tight end landscape is just so nauseating that's fine. I don't have Conklin on my list because I'm hesitant to pick a Zach Wilson type player, a Zach Wilson supported player that isn't Garrett Wilson. And even then I'm not buying Garrett Wilson. So,
but here's the thing. The volume has been consistent.
Yeah.
5.5 average. So if you look at his last 4 games, it's been 6 targets, 5 targets, 6 targets, 5 targets. It was very easy to do the math because it was 6-5, 6-5. But that's a floor. That's all I'm looking for. A floor of opportunities, a floor of targets. I don't expect them to be big. There's a reason why he's behind Logan Thomas. Logan Thomas has a much bigger upside. But if I have a crappy tight end or a tight end that's been injured or just underperforming, and I just want a guy that I know is going to get 5 or 6 targets from a quarterback like Zach Wilson, who's not really going to push the ball otherwise, you could do worse.
Yeah, I'm definitely not gonna. I'm not gonna besmirch the pick at all. I just, Zach Wilson just scares me. I almost bought in last week, Brian. I ended up streaming Zach Wilson in a league last week, and I got 7 points, and I'll never do it again.
But it could be worse. You could have had Daniel Jones.
You're not wrong, Danny Duds. My number 7 pick, and this is it's kind of shocking that he qualifies, but in the leagues that I was looking at, this dude's roster percentage is around 25-30%. But I went Derek Carr, because he has great weapons. I thought the shoulder injury was going to be like something that was going to scare me off him forever, but he looked great last week. He was throwing the ball down the field. He was accurate. He had a great fantasy day. And I just think in a pinch, you could always do worse than Derek Carr. He's the ultimate quarterback streamer. And I am not at all mad at targeting Derek Carr if you're one of those disgusted Danny Dimes owners. Me personally, I haven't been super thrilled with Geno Smith. I'm keeping my eye on Derek Carr closely in that league. It's not pretty. It's kind of like the Tyler Conklin of quarterbacks. It's a floor and it's comfortable. So I'll take Derek Carr and
you heard it here first. Derek Carr is the Tyler Conklin of quarterbacks. Can't say I've heard that comparison before. We'll quickly go through Sam Howell because we mentioned him earlier. He is my number 8 waiver wire pickup. Current QB5 in week 5 in that shootout with Chicago. And one of the things I like about him is he has the ceiling. He has running ability, which is always nice to have that kind of mobility for the floor. But he's got a pretty decent slate. He's got the Falcons, the Giants, and then an Eagles team that, for all their prowess on defense, has been weak in the secondary and has been pretty generous to opposing quarterbacks. So I just like that slate coming up. I like Howell's upside. He is going to take some sacks, which is going to lead to some turnovers. There's some volatility there. So the floor is pretty low. We saw in Buffalo how low his floor can be. But this is an upside play. If you want to go for a streamer, I like chasing upside. I like chasing ceiling, Kev.
It's totally an upside play. It's totally a matchup play, which you highlighted. There's favorable matchups coming up. And we saw in a really, really bad game script where he got absolutely dog walked by the Chicago Bears, he still threw for 388 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's sort of like if a quarterback can produce in garbage time, I'm comfortable with having them as a streamer.
I
Or
think he had 40 yards rushing the week before as well in that overtime game against the Eagles.
yep,
So
a lot of upside. A lot
yeah.
of upside. Both my quarterback plays that I threw in my top 10 are more floor plays, both Gardner and Carr. So I like the Howell play because he's athletic, he's got an arm, he's got great weapons. Definitely love the pickup of Sam Howell. My number 8, we talked about a little bit, but I'll just get into it a little bit more. Deontay Foreman.
Hmm.
I think he's just a little bit safer.
It's like a 1-week rental, which is
It,
fine for waiver wire.
it
Like,
could be Brian, but also he's done it. And I'm not saying Roshan's looked bad or anything, but Foreman was excellent last year for the Panthers. So I don't hate the thought that he might still have a role even when Roshan comes back healthy. They might go back
But
to
then,
the.
but then why was he inactive? Like, why did they not
It's
have him in the
weird.
game? That's that, and you might be right. He might still have it, but for whatever reason, something in the Bears coaching staff, they're like, he shouldn't even be dressed. Like, that's what worries me. What are they seeing in practice that they don't even want him active for the games?
It's a good point. And usually I ignore that point. And then I watched Kyrie Elam play football last week and I don't question anymore. When somebody's when somebody's a healthy scratch, I get it.
There's a
So
reason
you
for
might
it.
be right.
Yeah,
You might be right. But I'm gonna bet on what we saw last year. I'm gonna bet on the fact that he might be the only healthy running back. He's like a throw a dollar on him kind of bid if you're
right.
desperate.
Yeah.
Like he's not like a don't break the bank for him
People
whatsoever.
will probably be spending on Roshan. That's not a bad strategy as you throw in a dollar or two on a guy like Dante Foreman for a week
Yeah, he might
because
be the
there's not
starter.
going to be many bids on him. Roshan's going to be the sexy pickup.
Big time.
So I don't hate that, especially if you don't put a whole lot of fob into it.
Yeah, man. And I'm in some double flex 14, 16 team leagues, and it gets murky. So Foreman might be a smash play in those leagues.
Fair. We got 2 more to get to in our top 10. Let's go to one more tight end position at number 9. I have Dalton Schultz, a guy who you were really high on.
Like
You've
him.
been high on the Texans in
Big
general.
time.
Underperformed relative to expectations for the first few weeks, but last week, 7 catches, 10 targets, top 5 tight end finishes the last 2 weeks. He's the one who caught the go-ahead touchdown for the Texans and what looked like would be a game-winning drive
Mm,
for CJ Stroud. Ended up the Falcons win and kick the field goal to win it.
yeah.
But he's getting the volume in a very pass-heavy offense. He's got the talent. We've seen what he could do from his time in Dallas. I wouldn't hate someone for putting him ahead of Conklin. Conklin has just been more steady
Mhm.
opportunity-wise for the season, but I could easily be convinced to put Schultz ahead of Conklin in my tight end rankings.
Oh yeah, and you're right. The talent is there, the opportunity is there, the volume of the Texans passing attack is crazy, like way more than we all thought it was going to be. And not to mention, Brian, like there's going to be more keying in on Nico Collins and Tank Dell as they continue to progress and get better. CJ Stroud is, it's still early in his career. Eventually, as a rookie QB, I'm thinking the tight end will become his best friend, right? Like when Nico and Tank Dell get figured out a little bit, does Dalton Schultz become the valve? I feel like he should be, right? Like
He should, and normally that would be true, but Stroud has been pushing the ball downfield. And I
dude,
think that's why we didn't see a lot of opportunities for
gunslinger.
Schultz early,
Yeah.
right? And Nico and Dell have been great at creating space and getting yards after the catch. So I think Schultz is going to be a little more volatile. He's not going to be the Logan Thomas that Sam Howell's going to
Right.
pepper him 6 to 7 times a game, or Tyler Conklin 5 to 6 times a game from Zach Wilson. But Schultz is arguably more talented than both of those guys.
Yeah.
So a little bit of an upside play, but I think there's going to be weeks, honestly, Kev, where Nico and Tank go off and Dalton gets like 1 or 2 targets.
It will happen, right? Naturally, just because, I mean, he's still a rookie. He's still figuring stuff out. Dalton Schultz, I mean, he's not Travis Kelce or anything. He's good. He's a talented tight end, but he's not Travis Kelce. So it will happen. But as a bet on as a dart throw on will he catch a touchdown? Not bad at all. Very good tight end pickup. My number 9 pickup was KJ Osborne. We already talked about him.
That's
Very,
low.
very low.
That's low.
I absolutely, you convinced me. I would move him way up my list if I made it today. But that's what the waiver wire show was all about.
That's
I'm
right.
sitting here learning just like the listeners. So appreciate
I'm
that one.
here to help Kevin,
Yeah.
except in the league that we're in, and then
Literally,
I
yeah.
don't want. Yeah.
Oh, and dude, if Osborne was a free
It's a
agent, there'd be
dynasty. None of these guys are
yeah, I
available.
was gonna say
in
it would be a
dynasty.
bidding war, but yeah, these guys were yeah. I love the not in my league trolls, man. They're tough, man. You gotta get out of here with that, man. Everybody's got different leagues. Everybody's got different settings. You can't be an elitist in fantasy.
All right, let's close it out with number 10. And there's a few different guys that we could have put here, that I could have put here. And I'm going to mention an honorable mention, Kevin. You can do the same. But I went ahead and penciled in Justice Hill at running back. Somebody has to be the RB1 in that Ravens offense. And that somebody, by the way, is Lamar Jackson. But after
Right.
Lamar Jackson, I actually liked Gus Edwards. I thought he would be it. But Hill is a little bit more explosive. He seems to be getting the red zone work, which is always nice. He seems to be getting the pass down work. So if I'm picking a running back in a team that likes to run the ball for that Ravens offense, I'm going to go with Justice Hill. I don't love this. I probably won't actually bid on Justice Hill, but I got to fill out my top 10 list, Kev. Thoughts on that, and who do you have at 10?
Yeah, no, I like Justice Hill. I had him in one league. I kind of got when he got injured, I kind of had a tough decision. I had to cut him. So he's kind of like a post type sleeper a little bit, because he was one of those. He was like the week one when J.K. Dobbins' Achilles injury happened. He was like the first waiver wire darling of the year, and then he kind of hasn't really been what we thought he would be.
He's also been a little banged up himself.
Missed a couple games. He's good, and he'll definitely have his opportunities, no doubt. In a pinch, not a bad dart throw play. But not super inspiring. But I like it for this list because we're so far down that he might be the best running back available if you're in a deeper league. So can't hate, can't judge. I love the pick. My number 10 is your honorable mention pick. I had Jaleel McLaughlin written down first, but if we were going with 50% as our threshold, I think he's probably pushing that now.
He is, after last week. The fact that he was expected to start with Javonte out, I did not see him on the list of eligible players.
If he's there, get him. He should be
100%.
I would put
correct. I'd put him at 1 if he's actually on your waiver wire list. But yeah.
So keep your eyes peeled for players like that, like players like Jaleel McLaughlin, because that's a guy who can.
You can go ahead and reveal your 10th pick, and that was my honorable mention.
I swapped it out for Jeff Wilson, who, believe it or not, Brian, I drafted in a lot of leagues, and he's been in my IR slot because I have always loved his talent.
Nobody knew Achane was going to be what Achane has been.
Nobody
even Achane
knew.
Supporters.
Right. And I'm one of those as well. When it comes to Miami's offense, I'm just a buyer. Give me every piece I can have.
Yes.
But Jeff Wilson, he's always been a coach's favorite of Mike McDaniel. He's unbelievably talented. He's a great running back. Raheem Mostert has a vacation home on the IR. So Jeff Wilson is really not
a bad. Saying that, but Mostert has stayed healthy so far.
Until he's not. But Jeff has the same position too. Jeff's not a poster child for health, as evidenced by being on the IR to start the season. But he's a talented running back. He scores touchdowns. He gets yards, and McDaniel loves him. So if he's now occupying the Mostert role and Mostert is occupying the Achane role, that's a weekly flex play. If it pans out, we got to watch. We got to wait and see. We got to check out how he looks. Got to see if he's healthy, if he's active, all that. But the practice window has been opened. So you might be a week ahead on the Wilson buy, but it's better to be ahead than behind in fantasy football.
So the reason he was my honorable mention and the reason Jeff Wilson is not on my top 10 list is because I don't think he immediately inherits the Mostert role. So that was essentially a 60-40 split where Achane was actually the lead back, but Mostert was still getting a good 40% of the snap share. Wilson, as good of a running back as he is, doesn't have the speed element. And you see how well this offense functions when they have that speed element. So I think Wilson will not get it. I think Wilson will get some of the short yardage. He'll get some of the passing down backs. He's a very good pass blocker. And I think he'll get some goal line work. But that's not 40% of the snap share. So all of these guys are going to get better opportunities for now. Now, if Mostert gets banged up, suddenly Jeff Wilson is RB1 in Miami. I get that. Certainly not a bad idea as a stash. But just so everybody knows, that's why I didn't put him in my actual top 10. All right, we have one question, and we have multiple questions in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and say the questions are fantasy related. We have a live fantasy Q&A show on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. That leads right up until Thursday Night Football. So those questions about your teams and trades and all that, save them for Thursday night, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. Kevin Phillip Fox, the Pro Football Demon. We do have one, though, that relates to the waiver wire. Craig Schaefer said Amari DeMercado or Roschon Johnson. I know we addressed them with our rankings, but I still want to specifically address his question since he did put it in the chat.
It's got to be Roschon, right? I mean, it's a no-brainer. Could be longer term value, higher ceiling. DeMercado is, if you need somebody this week, as hard as that is, as hard of a
That
pill as
was
that is to swallow.
that
Yeah.
was going to be my caveat, is that if you need somebody this week, monitor Roshan. But what are you going to do? You got to put claims on both guys. That's a little hard, because there is still a possibility Roshan hasn't. They're expecting him to clear from what we're reading here at Legit Football, but there's no guarantees. Amari is guaranteed to be the RB1 against the Rams this week. So it's more like, do you take the risk and the higher upside by going for Roshan, but maybe he's not active? Roshan, though, will be the starting running back for the next 3 weeks after that.
Yeah.
So I would still go Roshan. Personally.
It'll probably cost you quite a lot of fab to get both. I would say get both if you can. But it's totally fine. It's not like, it's not the end of the world. If you need to start this week, get Amari.
Put in claims for both, but drop the same player for each. So that way, if you get Roshan and the guy's dropped, when Amari is there, it won't let you process it. And then you don't waste fob on both guys. That's what I would recommend.
That's a good idea. A little waiver wire strategery. Oh, look at that. We're on the same page. Look at that.
It's like we've been podcasting together for a long time.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But no, so that means Cameron, Armand, and Jonathan, we'll see you on Thursday. We love the fantasy Q&A. We love having people in the chat for the fantasy Q&A. Just turn notifications on for Legit Football when we go live on YouTube, because it will notify you when the show is starting, and we take a lot of questions. We talk for an hour. There's a little shenanigans, we get a little unbuttoned, things get a little crazy. So definitely come back on Thursday.
Thanks, Armand, our GOAT, always in the chat. Craig agrees with our claim strategy, so that we're giving good advice. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Waiver Wire Show. We go live on this every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific, with our top 10 list. Next week, the list you see up here will be a consensus of the both of ours, but we will still be giving our context. Don't forget, Thursday, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, the Fantasy Q&A show. It's just an hour of us answering whatever kind of fantasy questions you have. We always don't get to all the questions. That's how many come in.
Yeah.
Thank you to Kevin Phillip Fox, as always, for potting with me. Good luck on your waiver claims today. Make sure to sign up for Legit Football if you're not already, and we'll see you next week, guys. Good luck on your games.